Welcome to The Scoop, NANP's monthly educational webinar series. I am your host, Andrea Granson, Education Program Specialist for the NANP. These webinars are recorded and everyone who registered will receive a link to the recording. NANP members can earn 1 continuing education credit for participating in Scoop webinars by taking the corresponding quiz, which can be found in the membership area of the NANP website. Today's webinar will conclude with a Q&A session, so feel free to type in your questions as we go along so that we can get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's get started. Today we have 2 presenters, Dr. Liz Lipsky and Beth Romansky. Beth currently serves as the Director of Professional and Continuing Education at Maryland University of Integrative Health, where she oversees the development and coordination of complementary and integrative health programs to enhance the skills and credentials of wellness and healthcare practitioners. Beth also serves as adjunct faculty and consults with organizations on creating and implementing comprehensive group wellness programs and online courses and training in workplace wellness. In private practice, Beth is the creator and co-host of the Wellness Warriors radio podcast, a recognized sugar detox expert, published blogger, and professional health educator. Beth has developed several online wellness courses, co-developed the Wellness Warriors Sugar Detox and Anytime Reset program, and frequently presents community workshops and lectures on nutrition and living a healthy, balanced life. Welcome, Beth. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Andrea. This is a pleasure to be back with NANP and the community here of holistic nutrition professionals and doing another Scoop presentation with one of my favorite colleagues, Liz Lipsky. And we are going to be getting into a really exciting area of integrative health, the microbiome, and there's always new things to learn. So I am delighted to be with my colleague Liz today, who is the expert, my go-to for digestive wellness. And this webinar is brought to you by Maryland University of Integrative Health, Professional and Continuing Education. We are a partner of NANP proudly. We offer, as a division of the university, flexible online professional development learning opportunities in a variety of integrative health topics such as this. And we invite you, if you haven't done so already, to join our community of learners. We do have some discounts for the NANP community exclusively, so you can check that out with the promo code on anything that we have on our online learning or when we go back to workshops, our workshop page. And today I'm just delighted to present with my colleague, like I said, Liz Lipsky. Without further ado, I want to get to her bio because we have so much to cover. But if you would like to learn more about MUIH professional and continuing education opportunities like this one and others, please visit us at muih.edu/CE or email us anytime with a question. We'd love to hear from you and learn about your goals, and we want to support you in your professional development endeavors. And our email is ce@muih.edu. So without further ado, Liz, welcome. We've done so many presentations together, but I just love it every time. Liz Lipsky, if you haven't heard of her already, you're going to be in for a treat because she is the professor and the director of the academic development for nutrition programs in clinical nutrition at MUIH. Dr. Lipsky holds a PhD in clinical nutrition. She is a fellow of the American College of Nutrition. She holds 2 board certifications in clinical nutrition and 1 in functional medicine. In addition to MUIH, she also is faculty for the Institute for Functional Medicine and the Metabolic Medicine Institute Fellowship Program. And she really serves just as a wonderful resource. And she is an author, if you have not read her books, for digestive wellness. And we are going to be talking to you later about some of the online programs that Liz has developed in partnership with MUIH that you can explore further to enhance your skills and credentials in the specialization of the microbiome. So Liz, it's great to be with you here today again. We are about to get into a bunch of information and I will let you go over our agenda and our objectives, and then I'll join you towards the end of the presentation again.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Andrea. This is so much fun. So today we're really going to focus on the human microbiome, but also specifically, how does it dovetail with the immune system? Because right now we are all kind of in an immune wonderland, kind of thinking about our immune system more than we ever have in our whole lives. And so I'm just going to kind of jump in and we're going to go for it. So anyway, this is more about the professional continuing education, and there will be a special bonus offer at the end of this. So disclaimer, we aren't going to give you medical information or teach you how to prevent or treat disease. This is not about anything, like if you're sick, go see a medical professional. So let's get into the content. So the digestive system, to me, it's such a fascinating area. And, as nutrition professionals, what we think about so often is like, what are people eating? And we know most people are eating terribly. And even though when you ask somebody and they go, I eat pretty well, and then you look at their food diary and you go, okay, we've got a little bit of work to do. But what about all of the people who do eat really well and they have a good lifestyle and they still have digestive issues? Then what do we do and how do we start thinking about it? And so the digestive system comprises 70 to 80% of the total immune system. And when we think about it, the reason why that's true is because every day we take pounds of food and we put it in our body, and our body has to decide, what is this? Is this good for me? Is this dangerous for me? Is this something I'm familiar with? What the heck is going on here? So when we compare those pounds of food every day to a teaspoon of pollen that we breathe in a whole year, you can see why most of the immune system's in the gut. And a lot of that's comprised of what we call the malt, which is the mucosal associated lymphoid tissue, and that's in your nose and your lungs, and in women in our vulvovaginal area. And we also have the GALT, which is the gut associated lymphatic tissue. And these two comprise 70% of our whole immune system. And that's where our secretory IgA lies. We know that the mucus is where our microbiome lives. And, so this is a really important thing for us to start thinking about in terms of keeping good immune health. So some curious facts. I already told you about where the immune system is, and we have somewhere between 3 and 7 pounds of microbes that live on our epithelial surfaces. So these are comprised of fungi, bacteria, and viruses. So they're on our skin, they're in our nose, they're in our mouth, they're throughout our gut, they're in our lungs. We're starting to learn more about the microbiome of the brain and the kidneys and the pancreas. They're everywhere. And I woke up a few years ago with an epiphany. I'm like, they're not just on the epithelial surfaces, they're woven through every organ of our body. And we're starting to get the information that that's really true. We have as many bacteria in our gut microbiome as we have cells in our body. And we have 10 times the number of viruses in our gut microbiome as we have bacteria. And we call them bacteriophages. You might have heard the term phage. These viruses are actually, I think of them almost as sheep herders for the bacteria. They're kind of telling them how to behave. And then we also have fungi. And we don't really know that much about what the fungi are doing there. But if we start thinking about the importance of the fungi in the soil, I think that we're going to find a lot of really curious information as the research moves on about the benefits of healthy, balanced fungi in the gut microbiome. Mostly we think about it when it's out of balance, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Also, when we think about the amount of DNA that's in the human body, the bacterial DNA alone, not even the fungal the DNA or the viral DNA that lives in our microbiome, just the bacterial DNA outnumbers our human DNA 150 to 1, which means that you and I are less than 1% of our genetic material in our body is human, and the rest is microbial, which always kind of leads me to the question about like, well, who's hosting who really? And are we just a big sack for these microbes, because they do so much for us. We have about maybe 200 different microbes in our mouths. We have another 200 to 300 in our guts, and there's about 1,100 common species that are currently known in humans. And this is a picture I took about half an hour from where I live in Portland, Oregon, and this is the Columbia River. And why I like to use this as a metaphor is that digestion is a lot like a river that flows through us, and it can fertilize these fields, and it benefits the whole ecosystem. And just like a river, it could flood, and everything that's in the river could flood out into our bloodstream and cause immune reactions. We think about that as a leaky gut. And the other thing is that this river could dry up and become parched, and then we could, not be well hydrated and not have enough nourishment to nourish all the cells in our body. And that's really what the digestive system is about. It's a system for taking what we eat and nourishing every single cell. So in the American population, what we see is that food is really information. It could be the fruits and vegetables that are colorful on the left side of the screen, and it can be the candy that's really colorful on the right-hand side of the screen. And what we know from current research is that the average American person is eating about almost 72%, 71.9% of their food as ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed food. And so this ultra-processed food is used on a category system. And category 1 is the banana on the left side of the screen, or any of the food on the left side of the screen. It's really that whole food that comes to us just from nature. Category 2 foods in processing are the foods that the substances we use to make these more delicious. So for example, I'm going to take the green peppers, and I'm going to take the onions and the broccoli, and I'm going to saute them in olive oil and add some salt. It's the olive oil and the salt and the herbs and the spices, the sugar that we might add, or the honey or the molasses. Those are kind of level 2 processed foods. We wouldn't sit down and eat a bowl of molasses, but we might add a little bit to sweeten something. And so they're really the condiment foods that we think of. Level 3 foods is if I took some of the fruit, or if I took the vegetables on the left side of this and I made a vegetable stir fry at home. Well, that's kind of a level 3 processed food. I did process it, but it's still a really natural food. And then level 4 is all the foods that we think of as highly processed foods that are in our shopping market, our aisles. They have labels, they have ingredients you would never use in the kitchen. And 71.9% of that is what the average American is eating every single day. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having some candy once in a while, because that candy on the right side of the screen might represent to you your grandparents and the love that they gave you, or being a kid and eating those gummy worms. And so there might be a moment in time where that's part of like something that you do because it just connects you with like an old piece of yourself. But it is an inflammatory food, and we need to kind of always be thinking about that. So why am I bringing this up? Well, as nutrition professionals, I think it's really important to have this idea that food modulates not only our microbiome, but also our genome. And when we start looking at some of the actual research that exists on food and the microbiome and gut inflammation, you can see from this chart from Miles et al. That when we eat salmon and high omega-3 foods, you see that it kind of is protective against inflammation. You can see that too much salt could activate IL-17, which is the autoimmune pathways, and lead to gut inflammation. We can see saturated fats, artificial sweeteners. We don't have a lot of research on them, just 1 or 2 papers. And the research on artificial sweeteners in the gut microbiome is fascinating, because what they found was that in about maybe 40% of the very small group that they tested, artificial sweeteners, especially saccharin, really changed the gut microbiome. But in 60% of people, it didn't. So there's probably a genomic level to that. But what we do know is that saturated fats in great quantities, sugars in great quantities, red meat in great quantities, all can lead to activation of toll-like receptors and lead to inflammation in the gut. They can also lead to more dysbiosis. And I do have to say that the research specifically on saturated fats and red meats wasn't done on what, the beef that you got from your next door neighbor or the organic coconut oil that you're using. And so we have to take some of this with a grain of salt, yet almost every paper that I read says, oh, when you eat a lot of saturated fats, what you are going to get is more leaky gut. And so we know that dysbiosis and gut inflammation can lead to systemic inflammation and leaky gut, and really expose us and open us more to allergies, autoimmune conditions, and infections and cancer susceptibility. And I'll talk a little more about that later. So when we think about food as nutrition professionals, it's so important for us to kind of think about, well, are the foods that we're recommending inflammatory? When we look at the amount of inflammation that can happen, it's really throughout the entire digestive system. And, for example, when we look at the liver, fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is just running rampant in today's culture. And mostly that's due to our high food intake and just kind of dysbiosis. Dysbiosis actually leads that. And, we can have that inflammation anywhere. So let's start looking really at the microbiome specifically. I've talked about that it's comprised of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. And we mostly think about, well, pathogens, we have a virus among us right now that's a pathogen. And so we're mostly thinking about the pathogenic effects of bacteria and fungi and viruses. But they're comprised of really small amount of the human gut microbiome. And then we have commensals, which I think it's just almost a placeholder, like the word IBS, for we don't really know what they do yet, but we do know that as a group that commensals actually modulate our immune system, and they help us, but we haven't studied each one specifically. And so once we study one specifically for something specific, then they might get upgraded to probiotic or beneficial or probiotics. And the beneficial ones or probiotics or the probiotics are called that specifically because they've been studied and they have a known specific effect on human physiology. There's so much that we don't know about the microbiome yet. So where are these microbes? Well, we have a good amount in our mouths, but then think about the stomach. We've got the stomach acid there. So there aren't very many in the stomach. And then the small intestine also doesn't have a lot. The huge amount of those 3 to 7 pounds of them are in our colon. And what we're looking for in our microbiome is we're looking for a good amount of microbes, and we're also looking for diversity of those microbes. Now, when we talk about the human microbiome, what's fascinating to me is that we don't just have one microbiome. We have a different microbiome for every tissue in our body. And here's one slide that kind of shows that. You can see on the upper right hand of the slide, you can see that there's the major phylum, the actinobacteria, Bacteroidetes, Firmicutes, Fusobacteria, Proteobacteria, and they've assigned colors to each one of those. And you can see that the saliva has slightly different microbes than the gingiva in your mouth, or the tongue of your mouth, or your tonsils. And so even tissues that are so closely connected, they have slightly different balances of all these microbes. I read a study once that indicated that even my right hand and my left hand have only 70% of the same microbes because I do different things with my left and right hands. And so, think about microbiomes being everywhere in your body, but the biggest one is definitely the one that's in the digestive system. So what can influence our microbiome? And you're probably familiar with some of these things. Were you born vaginally or by C-section? Were you breastfed or bottle fed? Do you have, when you were a little kid, a baby to the age of 2 or 3, did you have pets? Did you live on a farm? If you did, you probably had a way more robust microbiome. Did you have older brothers and sisters? Because having more siblings gives you a more robust and diverse microbiome. Microbiome changes over the lifespan. So it develops in the first couple of years of life, and then it gets pretty stable and looks like an adult microbiome by the time a child is about 3. And then as we age, the microbiome again starts to kind of become less diverse. And then what culture do you live in affects it. Even if you live in the United States, but you originally came from a different country and you observe your traditional foods and go to markets that have foods that you're familiar with from when you grew up, you're going to have slightly different microbiome than you did in your country of origin, but also very different than a standard Western microbiome. Where you live in the world, your genetics and your health status, and all of these things are kind of given to us pretty early on. But the biggest way that we know that we can change the microbiome is through diet, paying attention to our circadian rhythms, doing time-restricted eating, or having a regular schedule, balancing stress, moving our bodies, avoiding chemical exposures as much as possible, avoiding antibiotics except when they're absolutely necessary, and other kind of drugs and medications. And I'm going to go into a lot of this. What I do want to say is, to me, my self-care is really important. When I get up in the morning, if I can, I spend the first 20 or 30 minutes of my morning doing stretching and yoga and calisthenics and quietly centering myself for the rest of the day. I might meditate. Mostly I don't meditate because I'd rather be moving. But I take some time to center myself for the day. I make sure that I eat, really healthful food almost all the time. I like to cook. It's how I balance myself at the end of the day by making a quick, easy, fast meal at least 5 days a week. I do some time restricted eating. I'm not religious about it, but I try to kind of delay my breakfast and stop eating after dinner. I move my body, and all of these things, what we're discovering is not only they modulate the microbiome, they modulate your genome as well. And so all the things that we know that make us feel really good in life are the same things that make our microbiome and our genome and our organs feel better. So why I'm saying this, it's kind of like as above, so below. We can keep studying tinier and tinier and tinier pieces human physiology, but and the genome and the microbiome. But what we're finding is mostly the things that make us feel better, like laughter and friends and connection and sense of purpose and meaning in life, and all those things also influence the microbiome in a beneficial way. So when the microbiome's out of balance, we call that dysbiosis, and it's not a specific infection. You don't have a strep infection, you don't have an H. pylori infection, but this could be parasites, it could be fungal overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, or just an imbalance of all of them, or a combination of all those things. And what we know is, when you look at this slide, what's interesting to me about it is like our immune balance. If you think about gut balance, we want to have good probiotics and prebiotics from our food. And we want good commensals, and we don't want very many pathogens. And we want this to be really well regulated, and it starts with diet. It starts with the prebiotic fibers and the polyphenols and the colors that are in our foods. It starts with those cultured and fermented foods. It starts with the fresh plant foods that we eat every day, the herbs and spices. But when this is out of balance, then we have inflammation and we have dysregulation. And so we can start seeing that balance topple. And we see this in so many of the people that we work with, and maybe even in ourselves. So when we start to kind of dive into this a little bit more fully, what you can see on the left side is a healthy microbiome, and the right side of this slide is dysbiosis gut microbiota. And what you can see is that when you have dysbiosis, you have more gut permeability, you have more endotoxemia from those lipopolysaccharides from gram-negative microbes that kind of stimulate the production of xylem to open up the tight junctions in your cells. We also have an upregulation of pro-inflammatory cytokines. We tend to be fatter when we have dysbiosis. We get more insulin resistance. We feel like eating more even though we're not hungry. We get obese and metabolic syndrome, and this can lead to type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, inflammatory bowel disease, and also cancers, although this slide doesn't show it, and autoimmune conditions. And so you can kind of see also they've said, oh, high fat, high sugar diet, stress and antibiotics tilt us more to the right, and a healthy diet lifestyle, prebiotics, probiotics, and fecal transplants move us back to the left side of that healthy balance. So we see that when the microbiome is in a dysbiosis, that we have a huge amount of health conditions that are affected. And I'm going to go a little bit more fully into some of them that are about immune system disease. But, you know, one of the things that fascinates me is that the gut microbiome produces toxins that affect kidneys and can contribute to chronic kidney disease. It's not on this slide, but we have research on glaucoma that is affected by the gut microbiome and driven by the gut microbiome. When I think of diabetes and metabolic syndrome, I think about it being driven by the gut microbiome. And so, you know, more we look at it, the more we say this has to be in balance. So when we look at autoimmune diseases, we have research on multiple sclerosis and rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and autoimmune hepatitis and inflammatory bowel disease and type 1 and type 2 diabetes. We've just got tons of research on that dysbiosis drives this. Also in cancers, we're starting to see a whole body of research on cancer and the microbiome. And is dysbiosis a result of the cancer, or is it an effect of the cancer? It's both. We know that all of the treatments that we use with radiation therapy and immune therapies and chemotherapies in people with cancer cause leaky gut and cause dysbiosis. We also can see that that when your microbiome is in balance, it's tumor protective. It keeps us there, and we know that a lot of the probiotics, for example, secrete anti-carcinogenic substances. So this is a huge body of work to kind of look at. We also can look at the lung microbiome, and we can see that in healthy people with healthy lungs, they have different microbiome than people with asthma or cystic fibrosis. And why I put this in here specifically is because we're seeing a lot of lung manifestations in people who have COVID-19. And this is a current slide on the possible role of the gut microbiome in modulating the immune responses in COVID. And what you can see is, if you look, you've got these anti-inflammatory T cell responses that help balance us. I like to think about T cells as the brakes of the immune system. The immune system, it's there to protect us, but once it's done its job, like if you have a sprained ankle, you want your immune system to come in and like start healing that ankle. Or if we have COVID-19, we want our immune system to kick in and get rid of the COVID-19. But then we don't want to have this long haul syndrome. We want the body to actually be able to say, oh, okay, well, the infection's really gone. So it's when the T cells, the T regulatory cells come in and they go, hey, the emergency is over. And one of the easiest ways to kind of boost those T regs is with cultured and fermented foods and with probiotics. And so anyway, so if that doesn't happen, if we don't have this good T cell regulation, which also happens with just eating healthy food and getting in nature and getting good exercise and sleeping, then we can start seeing that imbalance as well. Okay, so the causes of dysbiosis, and for us, we are nutrition professionals. I want to really focus on diet, and I think that we can really make a big difference in people by helping them change their diet. Leaky barrier, food sensitivities, again, one of the things that we can really work with. And then lots of medications can cause dysbiosis, toxins that we're exposed to, so minimizing those, and that's in our area of expertise. Drinking alcohol, especially overdoing on alcohol, and stress. I think people are really under a lot of excess stress. I can say that in my life, I've kind of gotten used to kind of living in this new way. It's amazing to me how adaptable we humans can be. But stress also causes dysbiosis, and then bacterial and fungal overgrowth can also cause dysbiosis. So when I think about how we build our immune resilience, I start thinking about the functional medicine tree, and it's the roots of the tree. Medicine mostly focuses, and right now with COVID-19, we're focusing on the virus itself, and nobody's really talking about, well, what are the roots of this tree? Is somebody getting enough sleep? Is somebody moving their body? Is somebody eating real food almost all the time? What are they doing to manage the stress of these times? What about their relationships? And where's their sense of meaning and purpose in life? And are there things that we can do to enhance our immune resilience, like making sure that our vitamin D levels are good and that we have enough vitamin A? And so this is, the work that we do is foundational for building this immune resilience. It's the elasticity and the resilience of our bodies that's so critically important. So this is Pike Street Market, and how do we actually, I love taking pictures of places where I am, and I love taking pictures of food. So, how do we modulate the microbiome with food? And why is it so important? Well, what we know is that diet has the most powerful influence on the gut microbial communities of healthy subjects. And as they said, as early as 2013, about 75% of the food in the Western diet is of no benefit to the microbiota. And, that's all the ultra processed foods that people are eating. And so most of it, those highly refined carbs, are absorbed in the small intestine. And what eventually reaches the large intestine can't feed the microbes that are there. But we're overfeeding the small intestine, which is why we're seeing so much small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. One of the reasons why we're seeing so much small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So what we also know about food and the microbiome is that you can change the human microbiome in one day, by changing how people eat. So I kind of love this study by David et al. And what they found was that diet would rapidly alter the human gut microbiome. So they took 9 people and they put them on 2 extreme diets for 5 days. The first one they put them on was a plant-based diet, which was mostly grains, vegetables, and legumes. And then the other, they had a washout period for 10 days. And then they had a heavy meat, egg, and cheese diet. Okay, so within 1-2 days, they saw major changes in the the RNA sequencing of the microbiome. Okay, but what I want to show you about this is about really this personalized area that we live in when we're working with people or working with groups of people. One diet doesn't suit all. So you can see in group A, you've got the plant-based diet, and the person A, when they went on the plant-based diet, you can see within almost immediately something really shifted in their microbiome and everything went up. Okay, and then they went off it, it went down, and then it went back to baseline, and then they went on an animal-based diet, and you could see that their line went down. But look at person B, exactly the opposite happened with person B. And with person C, you can see kind of like B and C, they had a different reaction. And then person D, pretty much no change happened no matter how they ate. And then person E, not much of a change on the plant-based diet, but when they ate on a meat-based diet after a few days, there was a big change. Now, I don't know what the specific microbes were or how or what their health impact was. They didn't actually measure any of that they could tell us about. At least they haven't released that yet. But, this is how fast our body responds to food. And so what we found from this and other papers, so this is a paper by Katiar, and I'm butchering that name, sorry about that. But the increased consumption of fruits and vegetables and higher fiber consumption seem to be associated with high bacterial richness. And also, we have to remember that it's not what you eat today or this week that matters, it's how you change your diet over a long time that really changes the microbiome. And most of us have been kind of changing our diets for a decade or more. It doesn't happen overnight. Nobody eats perfectly. But how do we kind of move our diet along a continuum so that what we eat habitually feeds our microbiome? So if you don't know about gut microbiota for health, sign up for their newsletter. They have it's kind of like the cliff notes of the gut microbiome, and they send all kinds of great little tidbits. And recently they just sent this little infographic, which you could use in your practice or just use. So how to eat your way to a diverse microbiota. Include dietary fibers, add probiotic-rich foods, cultured and fermented, choose a balanced amount of animal and plant-based proteins, include foods rich in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, nuts, seeds, avocados, whole grains, And eat plenty of vitamins and minerals, and hopefully in your food. But if you're like me, you also take supplements, which not everybody does, but you know. So, and then this just kind of reinforces what I've said. It's diet, lifestyle, environment affect our microbiome, and what you eat can impact the microbiome within 24 hours. But the more diverse your diet over long periods of time, the better your microbiome diversity will be. So one of the things you've probably heard about is short-chain fatty acids, and these short-chain fatty acids are made in the colon, and they're made by the fermentation of prebiotic foods, which are comprised of really our root vegetables, our high soluble fiber foods like oats, green peppers, onions, and Jerusalem artichokes, and nuts and seeds and whole grains, but also all of our fruits and vegetables, because the latest research on prebiotics, which I have a whole other lecture on, is really about it's the polyphenols and the plant bioactives in foods also act as prebiotics. They're food for the microbiome. And so when the microbiome actually gobbles up and eats these prebiotic rich foods, they produce these short chain fatty acids. And the three main ones that are beneficial in our bodies are butyric acid or L-butyrate, propionate, and acetate. And we hear a lot of about butyric acid. It's a gene modulator. It comprises 70% of the energy maintenance and repair that goes into keeping the colon healthy. But the propionate is taken up by the liver, and it helps with bile solubility, and it's anti-inflammatory. It's protective for colon cancer, promotes satiety, and help regulates serum cholesterol levels. And acetate moves throughout the body, especially in muscle and brain, and again has all kinds of benefits. And so it's these short chain fatty acids that really modulate the microbiome, but also modulate overall health. And these are created from the fibers that we eat in foods, and the microbes, and also sometimes probiotics. So how do we enhance these? We eat more prebiotic rich foods. We eat cultured and fermented food. We take probiotics. And if you ever wanted to test this, you could do organic acid testing or stool testing to look for short chain fatty acids and their balance. So dietary fibers, you probably already know that the average American person is eating about half as much fiber as they ought to. And so if we do even one thing in our recommendations with people, is making sure that they're getting plenty of fiber in their diet. And here is like the short chain fatty acid. These are a couple of handouts that I created to put into my Art of Digestive Wellness course, of which there's, like over 40 handouts and assessment tools. But this is just about the benefits of all kinds of fibers, and then kind of looking at the benefits of also of soluble fibers, prebiotics, and resistant starches. And to me, I think that they're all really one thing. Soluble fibers, again, just like probiotics, or resistant starches, just like probiotics, it's something's not labeled a prebiotic unless they know that it's associated with a specific microbe and it has a specific physiological effect. And so I think a lot of soluble fibers do that, but we just don't know specifically which microbes the soluble fiber in a green pepper, for example, might affect, and what kind of physiology that affects. So start thinking about prebiotics as soluble fibers, prebiotics, and resistant starches as all the same thing. And then probiotics, how do they affect the immune system? If there's only one thing that you really keep in your brain about probiotics, is that they modulate immune function and inflammation. They also are cancer protective, they're allergy protective, they heal leaky gut, and they're critically important for oral health. So, there are a lot of other things that they do, but because I'm trying to focus on immune and the microbiome here, I'm kind of focusing that way. So in our own lives, eat more fermented and cultured foods, eat more, here's just a list of some of these foods. Here's common probiotic supplements, lactobacilli, bifidobacteria species, streptococcus species, Saccharomyces boulardii, which is one of my most favorite probiotic supplements. And the reason is it's actually a yeast, it's a cousin to bread yeast. And it's in France, it's called yeast against yeast. It helps bring fungal dysbiosis back into balance. It's also probiotic and prebiotic. And then there's the soil-based organisms, which are the bacilli species. So reducing systemic inflammation, we want to do that with diet, either a good Mediterranean diet or an elimination diet of some sort, whether that's a paleo-immune diet or IFN's comprehensive elimination diet, or the one that I have in my own course. You want to start with food. Food is the most inflammatory thing we do. And sometimes you have to do baby steps when somebody's on a standard Western diet. Anti-inflammatory medical foods, they're things like, every company now has them, and they're usually protein-based, and they have boswellia and curcumin and other anti-inflammatory substances in them. Then adding, curcumin or ginger or boswellia as supplements or to your diet. This morning I had a smoothie, and in my smoothie there was a big chunk of turmeric and a big chunk of ginger, fresh kale, and a whole bunch of other things. Fish oil, we all know, is anti-inflammatory. Colostrum can also be anti-inflammatory, and probiotics. So again, I want to talk more generally about really, how do we balance that stress response? Today, I've already had two meetings, and when I'm on this webinar, I'm in sympathetic dominant mode, like go, go, go. So I have to balance that with a parasympathetic, which is, what am I going to do today to just kind of chill out? And so we start thinking about the gut-brain connection, and we start thinking about the vagus nerve. It's called the wanderer. The vagus nerve is so important. It regulates things from how well our pupils dilate all the way down to whether we have good bladder control. And in between, it really regulates that HPA axis and the gut-brain talk. And what we know is that about 90% of the information that goes between the gut and the brain goes from the gut to the brain, and 10% from the brain to the gut. Both ways are very important, but when we have gut inflammation, we have brain inflammation. So we can kind of look at kind of how this is involved, and it's so important every day to do things that enhance your vagal nerve function. So yesterday I went for a long walk with my husband in the middle of the day. I also stretched earlier in the morning and did some yoga. I read novels at night before I go to bed. These are things that make me feel happy and good. So think about what gives you joy in your life and do some of that, laugh, spend time on the phone with a good friend that you haven't talked to for a long time. Also deep breathing, probiotics like Belongum, mind body techniques, acupuncture, singing, chanting, listening to music, playing music, dancing, all these things really help. And also gargling or singing in the shower or gargling in the shower can also help. Gagging is not my most favorite way of stimulating the vagus nerve, but it works. And coffee enemas. I'm more interested in kind of what gives you joy and what makes you feel like you fill your bucket. Um, and then simple ways to unwind. This was a collection of us who kind of put these together, including Paula Bartholomew from Hawthorne University. And so deep breathing, prayer or meditation, spend time in nature, exercise. It's not optional. Call a friend, listen to music, play an instrument. Paula Bartholomew has some music for you. Read or listen to books on tape, play a game with others, solve a puzzle, plant a garden, savor the moment, right? This is actually some chard from my own garden, and the light was just coming through the chard, and I'm like, wow, it just looks so beautiful. I was savoring the moment. I do that a lot by taking pictures. So here's some websites that can enhance your stress resilience. Tara Brach, guided meditations, mindfulness meditation, binaural beats for anxiety. And here's a bunch of apps. And I can't tell you how many people more recently have told me that using these apps really have helped them these days. So that's what I wanted to tell you. Think about yourself first. Think about feeding your microbiome, because if you can feed your microbiome, you feed your immune system, and you also feed your genome, and you feed your entire body to reduce inflammation. So that's what I wanted to say, Beth. Up to you now.
Thank you so much, Liz. Can everybody hear me now?
We can.
Wonderful. You always are so generous with your knowledge and your information, and we're always all learning. Every time I participate with you, I have more questions and more things to ask. And one of the things that really stood out to me as a practitioner and as just, an individual living through a pandemic, and, life in general before that was stressful. And we often think about testing and what's wrong and fixing in some ways because we want to help people, but it's first helping ourselves with that self-care right now is so important. And anything that we can do as professionals and practitioners, I encourage everybody listening to remember that, because it's really hard to take that self-care time, whatever makes you feel rejuvenated. And so it's wonderful to be here with all of you today. Liz has been really important to our professional and continuing education program at MUIH. She was one of the first offerings that we developed. She developed a very comprehensive series of master classes with us, and it's all about balancing the microbiome. It's fully online, self-paced. You'll have lifetime access to this program once you enroll. It is comprised of 4 master classes focusing in specific areas of the microbiome and digestive wellness. And we are approved through NANP as a provider, but this particular program for CE is a category 1, and we have a discount for the NANP community with the discount promo code NANP10 to receive 10% off this program. And you can learn more about that either on our website at muih.edu/CE or through the link below. If you were able to get that link right from the presentation, we can put that in the chat as well. But Liz has also partnered with MUIH to offer her program through the Innovative Healing Academy. And this is actually a really interesting program. That's an online course related to her books in the art of digestive wellness. I actually had the benefit of enrolling in this course and participating myself, and it's very comprehensive from a practitioner standpoint as well. This program is also approved for 20 CEUs. And it also includes things that are related to cooking videos and multiple handouts and research articles. So you're going to get a lot of information if you enroll in either one of these programs. And if you enroll in Liz's Innovative Healing Academy Art of Digestive Wellness course through our partner link as a referral, we are able to offer the free digestive wellness questionnaire, which I encourage you to sign up for anyway, through that link that's in the presentation. It's bit.ly/PCE digestion quiz. And we also have a bonus for Liz to offer her Kindle version of her book if you enroll through our link there. by February 15th. But if you're watching this later, please just always reach out to us at ce@muih.edu if you have any questions. We are willing to support you and work with you as you investigate this yourself, as well as for your clients. And I don't know if we have any time for questions. I wanted to offer that time, but I just want to say that it's a pleasure to be with you all, and that just being in the space of, it's not one size fits all. There's not one approach to wellness, and that if we can even help people make these small changes in their lives, even if they don't have a lot of money to pay for supplements or a lot of the tests that we may want to offer them, they have the access through, just stress management. We could help them there. We can help them with their diet in easy, affordable ways. So it's just, I'm really excited to be in this community, particularly now. And so, Liz, would you like to talk more about any of your courses, or Andrea, do we have some time for some questions? I'm not sure if we do, but I would love to open that up to the listeners.
Yeah,
We do have a few minutes.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I was going to say, can you ladies see the questions, or do you want me to read them out?
I'd be happy to read them.
I cannot see them because my
Okay.
slide deck is up.
No worries.
You can read them or I can read them. I was waiting to respond, but go ahead.
No, well, one of the questions is from Susan, and she's asking about how much time would you recommend to allot for each masterclass, just approximately. I think they're pretty short, but you.
Yeah. So for the master classes through MUIH, those will range from 2 to 4 hours. But again, you have your limit. You have as much time as you want to complete them. So they're broken down into shorter videos, so you can take them, at your own pace, little small segments when you have time, and you'll have lifetime access to the program to review and reuse. And there are practitioner client handouts. Liz's course is the same way. Liz, you might want to chime in, but it's very flexible in that way. The videos are very short in terms of consumable little tidbits. And then, Liz, I think you have a limit on how long you have access, but it's still very long to get through that program. So it's very flexible to busy schedules.
Yeah, my program, Art of Digestive Wellness, is available for a minimum of 2 years from the time you sign up for it. And why we have that is we think eventually it'll just kind of be out of date and I'll need to make a new course. So, but it's still very current right now. So that's not a problem. And my course, there's about 10 hours of videos. And then we recommend that you use my book, Digestive Wellness, along with the course. And it's been approved for 20 continuing education hours. So the total amount of time is probably about 20 hours if you actually really consume the course. And you can do that over a period of as long as you like.
And I'm posting some links in the chat as well, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I can share these links when we send out the replay, which will go out tomorrow. Also, Deborah's asking, are the slides available? So I don't know if you guys are okay with me sharing the slide presentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. We can send you I sent you a version with Liz's previous bio, but you can use that, or you can wait for us to get the new bio, and we can get that over to you.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions. I think we've answered everything, and we are almost at the top of the hour. So I want to thank you both. This was a really informative. Just to say, I'm sitting here with my vagus nerve stimulator on.
Yeah.
I use the Modius. But yeah, big topic. In fact, maybe we'll get someone back to talk about vagus nerve, because I think it's a huge part that we want to be sharing with our clients. So thank you for that, Liz. That was awesome.
It's interesting because some of the things Liz mentioned, we have a psychoneuroimmunology course, we have a stress resilience, HRV, vagus nerve type of course, we have the bacteriophage course. I mean, there's so many things about, this topic that are very interrelated. And, I think there's always more to learn, but it starts with ourselves. So I'm glad to hear you're doing some stimulation. I need to go do a little yoga stretch myself before my next webinar. So I encourage everybody to do the same.
Okay, well, thank you both very much, ladies. This does bring us to the end of our discussion today. I want to thank everybody for attending. Next presentation will be Normal Bone Density Scores Aren't Good Enough by Reed Davis. So please mark your calendars for Thursday, March the 11th. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everybody, and bye. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Beth. That was wonderful.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for having
much.
me.
Okay, bye, guys.